My name's Barry Cranford. I'm the organizer of the London CTOs. A quick show of hands, is this anyone's first lunch club or have you all been before? Okay, cool. We're bringing people back. One must be doing something right then. So the lunch clubs came from the idea. We have this unconference every 3 months or so. We're actually hoping to have one late November. And what happens there is we put up these cards, and unconferences are great because people put up a card of what they want to talk about, and it pulls everyone together that has a shared interest in that particular topic. The problem is that we've always got more cards than we've got time for. So we wanted to find a way to take some of those topics and then make them bleed into the rest of the group. So my initial idea was to have one of these once a day. Chelsea took me into once a week. And so that's what became the CTO Lunch Club. And it really is that trying to pull people out of the community that have this shared interest. As you talked there, David and Neil, you've got this specific interest in this area, but there's only so much we can get through in an hour. So the point is to try and come together, meet some new people that are that have this similar interest as yourself, and kick off those relationships and kick off some conversations in that space. So we were doing one person, one host every week, and now we've changed it, or one specific speaker every week. Now we've changed it to more of a panel format. So we've got a different host each week. I've put a request out for within my network of who's open to volunteer. Sashin's taken the call and is going to has hosted today. Who's just gone sideways for some reason. But yeah, Sashin's come along and has recruited a great panel here who are going to help dive into this topic. So Sashin, I'll hand over to you, and for everyone else, I'll put a document on the chat so that you can add your LinkedIn details and connect with other people here if you want to follow up afterwards. So Sashin, over to you.
Cool, thanks, Barry. So hi everyone, thanks for joining and taking time today. I am Sachin Shah. I'm going to be hosting the panel. Few technical issues. So my laptop isn't working, so I'm on phone. That's why I've been kind of flipping around. But Adam and Tom has kindly also agreed to help on the Slido things. And I think we have Jack, one of the panelist. He did have some issues on the internet, so I'm hoping he will be able to join. But if he doesn't, then we'll have to share the knowledge with Adam and Tom. So just a few glitches. So what we thought is we kind of when Barry asked me to host a panel, I thought about the topics, and sovereign AI and sovereign cloud is something I have been thinking about. And in my last role, I kind of implemented a flavor of it. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that's why I kind of picked up this topic, because it's kind of very relevant at the moment. And Tom, Jack, if he can join, and Adam has kindly agreed to be on the panel. So the way we are going to run this is we have a couple of questions on the poll on the Slido. So we'd like you to kind of respond to that, so that we also know that we can gauge the knowledge of the crowd as well, and maybe the focus where we need to be. And then there's a Q&A link as well. I would request everyone to kind of put their questions there, so that people can upvote it, and then we can go through the questions towards the end of it. So with that, I am going to kick off with the round of introduction. I am Sachin Shah, as I mentioned. I'm the CTO, kind of in the scale-up CTO in the range of 5 to 20 million revenue. And largely on the data and AI platform, SaaS platform build. I'm also an investor and advisor, and as I said, my main interest in the sovereign cloud and AI, based on my last implementation, but also just as a general knowledge about building the SaaS product and implications of it on the build. So I'll hand over to Adam for introduction.
Hi, thanks. So I was CTO for a long time in startups, scale-ups, and some corporate, and then I did about 7 years of fractional CTO stuff. And then coming out of the fractional CTO, spent the last 3 years almost entirely dedicated to working with LLMs, especially the whole of last year, just doing a lot of R&D with LLMs. And then this year, I've been mostly doing advisory and working with other people's companies, helping them do AI rollouts, helping them do AI for operations, AI for engineering, AI for products, everything. And increasingly, two of the really big questions that are becoming not just questions, but practical realities that we are fighting our way through at multiple companies now is hosting of LLMs. Where are they? What are they doing? How much is that costing? And what is our future? And how much control do we have over it? So that's my personal interest in this stuff.
Cool. Thanks, Adam. Tom?
Brilliant. I'll go next. Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Hudson. I'm the co-founder here at Adroit Cloud Consulting. A lot of our work focuses on helping organizations design secure, scalable cloud and AI platforms. We've been doing a lot in the secure AI space recently, and it really made me think hard about what sovereignty really means, not just for nations, of course, as is coming up in the news, but for every product and team that needs control over its data and various models. For me, I suppose sovereign AI, it's not really just a buzzword, it's a question of trust, resilience, and ownership. That's it. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Tom. Do we have Jack yet? No. Okay, fine.
Dashin, I think he might have just joined that second.
Excellent.
Oh, okay. Excellent. We'll just give him.
Jacob, are you with us? Maybe he's gone. I think I saw his name just joined, but yeah, so maybe bring him in. Sorry for interrupting the flow there. Maybe bring him in a bit if he's able to join.
Okay. Chelsea, can I please request if he joins, can you let me know? Because I'm trying to shuffle between the multiple kind of the participant window and the speaker window. So I might miss him. But in the meantime, while Jack hopefully joins, let's maybe go back to the poll and see the results in terms of the two questions. Do you understand sovereign cloud and its impact or lack of it on the product architecture? And the second question was, are you actively solving the challenge in the sovereign cloud or AI for your product?
We can't do votes on the second one until we close the first one.
I think you can probably close the first one, I guess. Yep. Hoping everyone has.
Give everyone like 5 seconds to vote on the first one. 4. Yeah, votes coming in now. 3.
Excellent.
2.
Thank you.
1.
Excellent.
Oh, that was another vote. I'll give you two. Oh no, 2 more votes. It's all coming in now. Right. Okay. And now we're definitely stopping the first one. So, can you see the results, Sachin, or do you need me to read them out? And I'll open the second one while I'm doing that.
Probably share the screen or maybe read it out.
Yeah, sharing the screen is going to be tricky at the moment because I have 3 different monitors.
Okay.
So for the second poll is now open and people already started voting on that. Excellent work. The first poll, do you understand sovereign cloud and its impact or lack of it on product architecture? We've got overwhelmingly kind of with 70% of the vote. And
Okay.
a couple of people saying yes, a couple of people saying no, not at all, but nearly everyone saying, yeah, kind of.
Okay, excellent.
And so far on the second question, are you actively solving the challenge of sovereign cloud? I was about to say it's all no, and then one person voted yes. So we have one yes, but nearly everyone no.
There's a space on the panel.
Jump in. I hope Jack will be able to join, but let's kick off in the interest of time. So thanks everyone for responding to the poll. It sounds like there's a bit of a mix, more leaning towards kind of, and maybe not actively solving the sovereign cloud. So hopefully the session today will be helpful, and you'll be maybe able to take it back on your product architecture, whether it applies or not. So maybe we're just starting with the base question as to what is sovereign cloud or sovereign AI, essentially. So, I mean, I have implemented, as I said, on one of my last SaaS product. I would say a flavor of it, but not necessarily a full-fledged sovereign cloud. So I would probably ask Adam if you want to explain what is sovereign cloud, sovereign AI from your perspective.
Yeah, sure. So sovereign systems are ones where, not to be put too fine a point on it, you control everything, and it's entirely within a jurisdiction that you control. So, for instance, you might say it's entirely in the UK, or it's entirely in the EU, or it operates entirely under North American law, and so on. The difficulty there is that it's very easy to gloss over some of that and forget it. So obviously, and we're going to go into this in more detail later, I know, so I shall gloss over this, but there are elements of the data, there are elements of processing, there are elements of operations, there are elements of legal. A couple of things I just want to highlight on that front to put it out. One, if you can't prove your systems are sovereign, they're almost certainly not sovereign. Proof is your reasons for doing sovereignty are almost all to do with you cannot afford to be wrong, and legal redress probably isn't going to help you. If you are worried about your data being exfiltrated to some foreign government, if it's exfiltrated, it's too late to sue people. You need to have proven in advance that couldn't happen. Another question that comes up a lot is, and I'm just throwing these out to illustrate the breadth of it. I know that the panelists are going to jump into this in a lot more detail. Another question that comes up a lot, I started my career as a back-end, large-scale, massive multiplayer online games developer. So this one is one that I'm very familiar with, of what happens if the fiber is cut? How complete is your system? If there's anything you've forgotten and it suddenly goes down, for instance, AWS going down the other week, and a lot of systems stopping working that people didn't realize were dependent on it. You've then got the big ones of maintenance. You've got the twin pair of change maintenance. So is it sovereign today, but if you want any updates, it stops being sovereign? So for instance, with an LLM provider, they may give you a snapshot of the LLM you can use today, but if you ever want updates to the latest, greatest ChatGPT 6, 7, 8, that may only be possible if you sacrifice your sovereignty. At which point did you even have sovereignty to begin with? Open question. And then the final one on that is debug maintenance. So what happens when something breaks? Where do the crash logs go? So you may have proven there is no egress, there's no tampering, and that all permissions are secured in your country with crypto keys that are physically stored in your country. But what happens if there's a crash? And to highlight two elements of that, I just want to point out, what was it, 2021, Microsoft lost cryptographic signing keys on Azure. And by lost, I mean exfiltrated by Chinese hackers affiliated with the Chinese government, because reported at the time, although Microsoft has since walked it back and refused to say what the reality is, but they reported it as our crash dump software did an automated crash dump of one of the core servers that included the private key. And our code for preventing that key from being included in the crash dump failed. We've now fixed the bug. But it's just to point out that a simple crash dump could undermine your entire sovereignty. And the last point I want to make on that is on the legal side, which I haven't really covered there at all, but on the legal side, it was only, where are we, June, July, about 3 months ago. Sorry, Microsoft, to pick on you, but you're unfortunately very important and big in this space. This isn't to say Microsoft is the bad guy. It's just the other vendors all have the same problems, just Microsoft has been in the news on it. Microsoft head of legal, I think, for EMEA or Europe was up in front of the French government and was asked about data requests and replied that if the US government asked Microsoft to exfiltrate all data on French citizens, would they comply with it? And his response was the word absolutely. He was then also asked, can you guarantee under oath that data would not be transmitted to the American government without the agreement of the French government? And he said, no, I cannot guarantee that. He also went on to say that, he said that, but it's okay, this isn't a quote anymore because I can't remember the exact wording, but it's okay because if that ever happened, we would publish the fact it had happened, and we have never published the fact that it has happened. However, if you go and read the Cloud Act in the USA, it says it is a legal requirement that you are not allowed to state whether or not it has happened. The US government can tell you as a corporation you cannot state it. So when he said, and it's never happened that we've published it, one reading of that is it has happened, we haven't published it. And I said that we haven't published it. I didn't say it hadn't happened. I just said we hadn't published it. So there's a lot of things in there and there's a lot to unpack. Hopefully that is a good kickoff for everyone else to now jump in on it.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I mean, for me, summarizing it, it cuts across data processing, ops, and legal, but from architecture perspective, it's not only runtime. You have to kind of look at the resiliency operations, operations side of things, and even the DR side of things as well. So yeah, it cuts across many facets, depending on the complexity. Tom, and what about you? What does sovereign cloud, sovereign AI mean to you?
I think Adam did a fantastic job of summing that up. For me, sovereign cloud and AI are really about control and assurance, knowing exactly where your data and models and infrastructure as a whole lives, who can access them, and under what legal or operational boundaries. I mean, the moment your data crosses a border, it can fall under another country's laws. And don't forget, even if it's encrypted or stored with a trusted provider.
True. Thank you.
Yeah, there's been a lot recently. So UK government this week was talking about giving ChatGPT to 2,500 civil servants.
Yeah.
And the quotes from OpenAI were all, the data will be sovereign at rest. It will be encrypted at rest. It will all be at rest. And you're like, why do you keep saying at rest? What about processing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is why so many organizations are rethinking where their workloads run and who has the ultimate authority. It's I guess it's as much about compliance and liability right now as it is all about engineering.
It is, and I mean, when it comes to also the processing side of things, it also kind of how far do you go when kind of displaying the data or translating the data onto the front end, or processing the data, storing the data. So there's a lot on that. And as Adam mentioned, that even the log, operations log as well, that kind of you generally have some level of information in the logs to be able to diagnose the problem, and how far do you go in that. So cool, thanks for that. We don't have Jack yet, do we? Okay, fine.
No,
I think
not
I'm
yet.
going to okay, fine. I think I'm going to carry on. Apologies, everyone. He has internet challenge, but he couldn't join. So okay, I'm going to move on in that case. So now that we have kind of explained what the sovereign AI and cloud is from your respective perspective, would it be could you give a indication of like what your experience, or what was your recent experience on either building or advising on the sovereign cloud side of things? I can kick off. As I mentioned, we had at my last startup, we had a AI SaaS product, and one of our client was in the UAE, and as many of you would recognize, that UAE does have a very strong data residency and processing requirement. So the only way they could agree to purchase or consider is if we have our SaaS platform available within the UAE cloud provider. Now, this is where I was saying that it is a flavor of sovereign cloud and sovereign SaaS, if you like. But we were going more from the perspective of residency and data processing, rather than going all the angles around legal and operational side of things. So that's kind of my experience on delivering on the sovereign, a flavor of sovereign cloud or sovereign SaaS product recently. So, Tom, do you want to maybe explain to the folks as to what your experience has been on delivering sovereign cloud?
So in our organization here, we've been doing a lot in this space, designing private fully compliant AI systems that keep control over the data and where it remains. And we're also taking into account that regulations evolve, right? So we're very involved in advising our customers on how the regulations evolved and what that means for them. It's less really about this, it's less about the technology itself and more about control. Who really owns the data and who really has access to it, and under what laws, as I said, earlier. We focused on helping teams get the benefits of the AI, but while remaining compliant. That's our experience with it here in our organization.
Cool. Thanks, Tom. Adam?
Yeah, so experiences so far are mostly in a what I cynically shake my head at and sigh of. So it's happened to organizations I've been in. It's also happened to a lot of other organizations people have told me about, and I've chatted up with them over beers and coffee to figure out what was happening. And it seems to be the same in each case, pretty much, which is if you are selling services, especially SaaS services, to major companies, there is a lot of concern about sovereignty, but more still on an obsession of, are people going to steal our data when we send it to their LLM or their LLM-powered service? We don't trust OpenAI. That's a common one. I think that's hilarious because the one you shouldn't trust is Grok, who, last time I checked, the terms and conditions said, if you even use Grok once in your code base, you have just given your entire code base to XAI in perpetuity, no comebacks, haha, thanks for bankrupting your company, Elon's very pleased. OpenAI is nowhere near as dodgy as that, but that is the big concern. And then it ripples down because what we're seeing is companies demanding SLAs that say, we would like an indemnification and warranty that at no point anywhere in the design, production, delivery of any product or service that you provide to us has any data, ideas, concepts, strategies, plans, roadmaps, etc., ever been broadcast to or shared with any LLM except for LLMs which we directly control and are under jurisdiction X or jurisdiction Y or jurisdiction Z. And on the face of it, that's insane. But we're seeing it in something like, I'd say about 10% of 7- and 8-figure contracts. That kind of language has been creeping in. I think a lot of it is down to legal teams and lawyers who are looking for ways to scaremonger. But the reality is we then have to deal with it and we have to field it. And some of those requests are not unreasonable because some of those customers have real problems. I'm going to finally add, on the flip side, I'm also seeing it a lot with when I then try and push that downstream, some of the major vendors, and I'm talking, big public companies, are doing a really bad job at providing even the basics to support this. One who will remain nameless is currently trying to push through. So we've got this new AI feature, right? And you can do good summaries of your customer data. And when we asked, okay, so, but some of our customers must be excluded. They went, oh no, that's not an option. Well, we don't want to turn it on then. Oh, that's not an option. Either you dump this entire vendor or you accept that all your customer data goes to their AI. Which AI? They're not telling. Can we control it? No, that's not supported because they didn't design that in. So we're at the moment, I feel quite often in that stuck in the middle between basically FTSE 100 and Fortune 500 companies demanding the world on a stick and major SaaS vendors still caught with their pants down, not ready to support this on their end.
Yeah, that's quite interesting because most of the enterprise buyers do have that list of like what technologies you are using, what vendors you are using, etc. And that becomes quite interesting in the sovereign AI and sovereign cloud world. Yeah, many organizations are not necessarily ready for it. Just a side question in terms of for both of you. Where would you say the requirement for your particular use cases that you worked on typically come from? Is it CTOs? Is it clients? Is it founders, CEO? Where does that typically originate from, Tom?
Answer quickly from our side. So we're seeing it a lot with the highly regulated industries, financial services specifically, where there is a lot of concern about data egressing all over the place.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Somebody put their hand up there, so it obviously resonated with somebody. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, if I can
Adam?
interrupt for a few seconds.
Oh, yeah, sure, Alex, go ahead.
Basically, my large experience, my experience of sovereign cloud has been entirely working in the financial industry for a Swiss bank that needed to have its entire system within the Swiss version of Microsoft Azure. And I think that's all I can tell you. That hence one of my questions, which was, if you're forced to consider sovereign AI and sovereign cloud, then you consider it because of regulation. But I'd be interested to know what other people are thinking if they're not forced to and just think it's a good idea.
Sure. Yeah, I think so. I think it kind of, from my perspective, it kind of is a combination of probably CTO and CPO kind of identify, at least from the product-led organizations, to understand whether there is a sovereign requirement right from the get-go or not. And sometimes it depends in terms of what is your target market as well, because then you can roadmap it, but then there's a downside that you stood up the whole architecture and then you trying to unpick the challenges later down the line. Yeah,
I'd absolutely echo that, Sachin. It's worthwhile getting ahead of now. Things are changing fast. Regulation is changing all the time. Less dependency later on, right?
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So I see, Adam, you mentioned there are questions. So I'll come back to the question, but please post your questions on Slido or vote up or down the questions on Slido as well. We'll come back to it in a minute. In terms of then, like, why should a product-led company worry about sovereign cloud or sovereign AI? Why does it impact? I mean, Adam and Tom, both of you have kind of touched upon that in your previous answers, but maybe more focused on why should the product architecture care about sovereign cloud? Adam, do you want to take that first?
Sure, and I'm going to loop in. Alex has just asked, "What is product led?" Do you want to just jump on that very quickly, Sachin, and then I'll answer.
Yeah, sorry, I should have clarified that. I mean, what I mean by the product led is the revenue and the growth is more product driven rather than sales driven, in the sense that the product is the main value proposition. It's not about services business or professional services business. I mean, it is relevant for the professional services businesses as well. But what we are focusing here, I mean, at least for the topic, we were more coming from the product organization perspective. So typical startup and scale up, which has the SaaS platform or AI platform.
The main thing is you're running something in the cloud. And that's the really important thing.
Yeah.
Is what you're telling me is that. Great. Thanks very much. Sorry for asking.
No.
It's fine. It's a relatively new trend to be describing things as product-led and product-led growth and product-led organizations. So yeah, going back to your question, Sachin, I want to loop in slightly both, I think, Alex's and Mal, I should stick my glasses on, Alex and Mal's questions on hardware. It's a bit of a weird way to answer a question about product development, but the biggest single one that I've encountered is that relatively small changes in the product architecture, product design, product requirements that have been put in place because of sovereignty can have utterly enormous, massive changes, specifically on the hardware side of this particular problem. Because workloads with LLMs are not fungible. They do not easily just translate. We do not have, oh, it worked on this LLM, it will work on that one. What you can do on ChatGPT 5 does not, you absolutely cannot do on Llama 4. Just forget it. It's never going to work. Your entire product will fail. So that then begs lots of questions about changing your product design and product development process. And in particular, for instance, if you were going to use Llama 4, I would recommend against it in every situation. But if you're going to use Llama 4, you're going to have to design a much more in-depth product, which has a lot more small pieces and a lot more checks and balances, because that LLM has a lot of problems. And you're going to have to, you can't just fire stuff off and let it work on it. None of this deep research stuff that you've got with the GPT and Claude. So it ends up fundamentally changing the entire design of the app, even down to the user interface, then through to the engineering and so on, because of that problem about hosting, about physical hosting of these things.
Sure. Yeah. And then overlay, if you like, a conversational or voice AI, that's another beast. So
Yep.
it just keeps on adding. Tom, anything to add from your perspective on the product architecture?
You've really nail on the head from Adam there. I mean, now customers, they don't really just care about what you build, but about how and where you build it, I'd suggest.
So, I mean, maybe
I just want to point out as well, where you build it is a very good point, because I think that one is a bit subtle at the moment. It's not getting that much attention in the media, but I think it is building a lot in the background of people have been talking a lot about where are you building it in terms of, are we paying you for developers when actually you're just using AI to build the code? But I think it is starting to quite rapidly segue into, wait a minute, yes, it's sovereign, but it's being developed in Eastern Belarus. Who controls the developers? Wait a minute.
Yeah, and that's massive, Adam. Yeah. Thanks for expanding on that.
Yeah, that's kind of going back to the point of like how far you go in terms of the sovereignty and how do you cover from the legal and operational perspective. But one of the things on the product architecture perspective that I was interested in knowing is like how this is relatively, I would say probably relatively new concept from kind of deep sovereignty perspective. Data residency is known a little bit more than sovereignty, which again, we'll come back to it in terms of the differences. But how do you avoid vendor lock-in in these kind of scenarios when you are creating product architecture and there are very small number of vendors who are providing that true, quote unquote, true sovereignty? Any thoughts?
I mean, I'm hoping someone in the audience has a neat answer, because this is an active live problem for me at the moment.
Who answered? One person answered that they are actively solving it. Do they want to raise their hand and provide some input into it?
I'll kick it off, and hopefully somebody can fill in the blanks. I mean, you've got to be pretty deliberate about the contracts and the SLAs and things that you're signing up front, haven't you? Do the due diligence up front. Can you get out? Can you move away?
Sure. Yeah.
Can I just comment though? But I mean, haven't we already heard the answer, which is to avoid any external APIs in the first place? Because as soon as you go down and use one other company's LLMs, then you're tied into them and you're not going to be able to move away. So the solution, as I see it from an infrastructure point of view, is build your own kit, build your own LLMs, or rather use your own public domain LLMs on your own hardware or on cloud hardware, but at least make it so that you are controlling the AI side of things.
Yeah. I mean, if your system can only run on one vendor's API or in one vendor's region, then you've locked yourself in.
I think the point I'm trying to drive there is essentially it's really difficult to do that without pouring loads of money into it in terms of the product development. So as in my view as a CTO, you need to be aware of that and maybe bring that up front, that okay, what type of sovereignty we are trying to build. And if we are doing the vendor lock-in, this is your option. But if you want to not have vendor lock-in, there may be some stuff from architecture perspective we might be able to do, but unless you pour in a lot of money, and then that gets the product development cost pretty high, you're not going to get the true vendor independent sovereignty as well.
So,
sorry, Adam, you're going to say something there.
Yeah, at the moment, we've got 3 broad categories that we're pursuing. And I say we, I mean my role at more than one different company I'm working with at the moment. So I'm slightly generalizing across 2 different disparate workloads and setups. But commonality between them is that, broadly speaking, you've got option 1, pick a, like Alex said, public domain, open source LLM, and decide that it's good enough. Broadly speaking, what's it called? Qwen, Alibaba's stuff, DeepSeek, R1, etc., are very good. They're much better than Llama. There is a question mark. In theory, you don't care that they were built in China, in theory. But in practice, it is possible that those LLMs could have backdoors written into them where they've been trained that if you ever write an auth routine, they should sneak a backdoor in that exfiltrates the private keys to someone else. That is not beyond the realms of possibility. So there is even there not zero risk. And how do you check an open source model? Good luck. Even the vendors can't figure out what their models do. So our chance of doing that, very difficult. But of course, there are checks and balances you can put around it. You can, all sorts of things. And all of us should have pretty in-depth security engineering stuff running already. So that's not a huge concern. So option 1 is you self-host an LLM. The LLM doesn't cost anything to get hold of. The self-hosting has one big problem, which is that there is no such thing as scalable AI hosting at the moment. You can pay whatever it is, a few cents to get your not self-hosted at all with OpenAI. Then your next step up is $10,000 down payment, or $30,000 or $50,000. Just to get a low quality like an L40GS or something. And then your next step up is a $250,000 outlay for an H100, H200 class chip that they're in short supply and everyone else wants them. There is no scalability here. There are some weird edge stuff going on in the community of trying to be able to network together commodity GPUs, but I don't know of anyone who's actually offering that as a service at the moment. I am talking to a few who say they are sort of doing it, but they're slow to respond. So I think the short answer is nobody's quite ready yet. So then option 2 is AWS Bedrock. As far as I know, certainly it's stuff we're actively investigating, Bedrock is the only option for getting a modern foundation vendor LLM, but hosted on hardware that you ostensibly control. If you believe and trust that AWS is good enough, and obviously from a sovereignty perspective, it totally isn't, but maybe it is for some cut down versions of sovereignty, you can get access to Anthropic models, so Sonnet, for instance. And you pay, I believe, 20% tax for that, or 10% or 20%. You're literally getting exactly the same service, but lower quality, lower performance, and you're paying more money. And it's on a server that you pay AWS for, and you hope that's good enough. Maybe if you get AWS to pin that to your region, and maybe you trust it, et cetera, et cetera. And then option 3 is the specialist vendors. So people like Civo, who are trying to compete with AWS on hosting, but their hosting is sovereign from the ground up. So they're a bit more believable when they say, like, our London data center is London only. Everything is London. Nothing goes outside London. And then they are running their own AI chips. And then you're back to you're paying somehow quite a staggered cost base to go up through the levels of what they offer. But then they'll add other value add services where they're single, and they're not the only ones out there doing it, but their single proposition is, our entire company designed this to be sovereign first. So perhaps it's an easier sell for you to go and use them. As far as I know, that is your only 3 options. Everything else just doesn't work. And those 3 each have different pros and cons, and none of them are clearly the best. Oh, sorry, there is a 4th option, which is if you trust Stargate, which is OpenAI's thing. But so far, everyone I've spoken to says, do not trust Stargate. So, and reading OpenAI's docs on it, I wouldn't trust it. It's smoke and mirrors. So
absolutely. No,
Yeah.
that's a good response, Adam. Yes, thanks. I mean, with Bedrock, it's something we've been looking at here as well, but you don't own a full control plane. They still manage the underlying model, don't they? So, yeah, it's an interesting one. Thanks.
Cool. I'm just conscious on time and I want to dedicate some time for the question. So I'm going to put a last question around what's the difference between data residency and sovereign cloud and sovereign AI. Hopefully, we have definitely touched quite a lot of points around here, but it would be good to kind of briefly summarize that from both of your perspective. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, residency is where the data lives, I suppose, and sovereignty is who controls it. Residency keeps the regulators happy. Sovereignty builds the trust.
Cool. That's a great summary. Adam, anything to add on that? Data residency and
No, I would agree with that. The only slight tongue-in-cheek modification I'd put is, sorry, give me a moment. Can I find this thing? Yeah, there we go. Have I got one? Yes, I have. XKCD 538. Which, if you know your XKCD very well, you'll know which one it is. That one. In your imagination, his laptop's encrypted. Let's build $1 million cluster to crack it. Oh no, it's impossible. It's 4096-bit RSA. Blast, our plan is foiled. What would actually happen? His laptop's encrypted. Drug him, hit him with this wrench until he tells us the password. That's sovereignty. It doesn't matter what you protected. Some FBI or KGB or assassin comes after you, holds a gun to your head. Residency and sovereignty. It's a very tongue-in-cheek, but for me, sovereignty is where you're worrying about a different class of malicious actor with a different class of assets at their disposal, including compelling the government to compel you to lose everything and you have no choice. And then residency won't help you.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I shall share that on our internal Slack.
Great. Thank you both. So we can maybe move on. I'll leave about last 15 minutes for the question answers. So Adam, could you just help me identify the questions, please?
Yeah, so we currently have about 8 questions. I will talk for about 10 seconds and give people a chance to upvote some of them. Only one of them has an upvote at the moment.
Okay.
You're all asking your own unique questions and ignoring each other's. So let's just start with that first one, where you will read the rest and decide which ones you want us to focus on. Does anyone offer any form of escrow for an LLM? Do enterprise contracts offer historic models?
Who wants to take that? Adam,
I don't know the answer to that. The second one, as far as I can tell, absolutely no, because I've been trying to get hold of that on multiple occasions at different companies. Getting access to historic models, now you can get access, but you pay so much money, you'd rather, it's unbelievably expensive, literally 100 times the cost they were before if you want the historic ones, because the vendors do not want to keep that stuff running. In terms of the escrow, I have literally no idea. I kind of looked into it and then I gave up because it just seemed like it was too difficult, and so nobody was bothering to sell it. However, I wasn't walking around with $1 billion in my pocket. If you have enough negotiating power, who knows?
Yeah, I haven't heard around the escrow side of things as well. I haven't come across the history, but like as you said, Adam, like it would be quite expensive. And it's one of those, I guess it's one of those things where you request to remove your data from the systems. In theory, it is available, but how effectively it works, that's only time can tell.
There was one this week, I think, or last week, very recent, of US government compelling OpenAI to pony up the chat histories of some users.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Now, it was in relation, if I remember, to a child sexual abuse exploitation case. So it's not done lightly, but and I haven't read the details, but I just skim read it, and it looked like it was a case of stuff that you may have thought was being had been deleted or was gone, may not have been deleted. because it is, I believe in their terms and conditions, they can retain anything for as long as they want if they suspect it's related to certain criminal activities.
Cool. Excellent.
We have another upvote. We have what are your thoughts on the prospect of using something like an NVIDIA DGX Spark to run loads locally with an open weight model? That's from Mal. You might need to expand on that question. That's a very open-ended question.
Hey, Adam, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, it was just a silly question, but I know someone that's thinking of buying one of those bits of kit. I don't know very much about it. I think it's about £3,500 if you can get one. I'm not sure if you can, but I was asked what my thoughts were on it, and I thought I would cheaply pass it on to you, since you're the expert in the room, and get your thoughts. So that's obviously where that question came from.
Well, someone's upvoted it. I don't have any specific thoughts on the Spark. I haven't looked into it at all, but I have been looking at that class of hardware and pricing. So that's in the $3,000 to $10,000 or $5,000 to $10,000 range. The most interesting stuff that I'm tracking is from last year. Answer.ai, Answer.ai, which is a website that does lots of research and publishes research on this stuff, built a cluster of, I think it was GTX 3000 series GPUs, and used it to run a large mainstream model. So they had something like 10 GPUs in total, 240 gig of RAM, which, when you account for all the loss of performance, was just good enough to run a 120 gigabyte model. So it was, I think off the top of my head, it was about 50% efficiency, but getting 10 of those GPUs costs you as little as $15,000. And getting a GPU that's powerful enough to run, this was last year, getting a GPU that was powerful enough to run a model that size on its own had a base price about $150,000, $200,000. So I think as far as I'm concerned, there is a problem of the hardware is great, but are the software tool chains catching up fast enough to enable you to hook those things together? Because the big problem, obviously, is the amount of VRAM on these. I don't actually know how much RAM a DGX Spark has off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I imagine it is not whatever is the current, like 180 gigabytes, what you need to run the current top gen models. So you would be expecting to either hook them together or be running smaller quantized models. And then you're either into this, what Answer AI is doing, or you're into the world of back to the, you could use Llama 4. Can you redesign your product so that it requires less intelligent, cheaper agents? Because if so, then you can run it on these smaller pieces of hardware. However, on the flip side, if you can re-architect your workloads to run on a smaller set of agents, maybe you have other options in the market as well, because running older, cheaper models, you may be able to do other things too. Sorry, so
Cool.
not a great answer. Sorry, Mal.
Aaron, you raised your hand. Did you have a question or?
Yeah,
want
I
to
mean,
add
I
anything?
think we're all swimming around. By the way, thank you for this forum. It's a fantastic forum. This space of not having enterprise architecture. I can remember going through this, 15-ish years ago, basically, right after the financial crisis, where there was this shove to the cloud, but there wasn't really, a real reference cloud architecture out there. And, most of us probably struggled through that for, a few years to maybe up to 4 or 5 years until those reference cloud architectures really started settling in. I feel that we're in a similar space because if your dependency in using any AI is an API-centric model, attempting to, tech debt engineer in-house, I think ultimately is almost going to be a fool's errand. You're just going to get consumed. You're going to wind up having to sign a big AMS outsourcing contract, just get sucked into managing yourself. I mean, it's just not going to scale. We all kind of went through this, if been around long enough, when we attempted these huge custom bolt-ons to ERPs and CRMs, and then that's tech debt that we're, hopefully most of us got rid of going into COVID, but or did during COVID, but and then we're back out onto the SaaSes, and so I do think it's almost a critical determination to figure out, is this going to be an in-house like R&D closed loop application or solution that's IP driven, and then that's different. That's a different decision. That would be like doing embedded programming, almost embedded systems. Or is it going to be a, large scale enterprise grade, N+1 API connected? And then at that point, it's really about baking off the large providers, right? The Oracles, AWS's, Azure's, Google's, et cetera. And that's how I'm presenting it to people, and that's how I've been thinking about it. And I've gotten pushback, but not so much pushback that says, okay, write a check for your pushback. And and most people fold eventually when Oracle discounts 73% or whatever. And it's hard to beat that,
Yeah,
objective. Hopefully
I
that made
guess
some sense.
yeah, it does. It does. And I think depending on the product as well and the company, the level of sovereignty, as we discussed, like how far you go, will differ as well. And end of the day, it will come back to the commercial proposition as well. How much commercially it makes sense to invest to build a solution which is completely sovereign when there is a requirement. This is where I guess this the role of the CTO kind of comes in terms of presenting different options and flavors of sovereignty, and then let the business understand it appropriately. Thanks for that.
No,
Cool.
thank
Just
you.
conscious of time, we have 5 minutes. Adam, we have more questions there. I think you said about 8 questions, so we
We
could probably
have,
go through another couple of them.
so the rest of the questions are
Ignore
almost all
mine.
from Alex.
Alex.
Right,
Go
in
on,
that
Alex.
case, the only one that's not from Alex, and maybe Alex might want to pick one of his to focus on, is from Ken. Is sticking to CPU/domestic GPU models the safer route? Do you mean as in home designed chips, Ken?
And what's Ken optimizing for?
I believe Ken has actually left the building. I think he had to run a few minutes ago, so maybe nervous about how that question was going to go.
Maybe we can pick up one question from Alex. Sorry, Alex, we couldn't answer all of your
I've
questions.
upvoted one of my questions, which I didn't want to do. So I was asking whether people were aware of the sovereign clouds provided by Microsoft and AWS and other big, let's say, American companies, and do you trust that they are entirely within your desired jurisdiction? I'm getting the impression that maybe not everybody does trust them in that respect.
I think it kind of, I mean, if I can address that from the way we had leverage for our UAE client, well, we did leverage the GCP, but we did not go into the kind of the finer detailed small prints of like the control and the legalities and etc. So I guess it kind of answer is probably again depends as to what are you building for and what are your key requirement, and then getting into the TNCs and small prints whether they do really become sovereign or not. Because ultimately, if they are still bounded by the legal jurisdiction of the parent company, then you still have a challenge to a certain extent.
Exactly
Adam,
that.
Tom, anything to add? No? Okay.
I
Aaron?
have something actually. So one of the reasons we chose Oracle, and we actually have SAP also for different S/4HANA requirements also, is that the established ERP legal infrastructure has been there for decades. The teams, everyone, the systems, the operators, the data centers. to, you know, it would require an alien invasion to lift and shift that at some scale, and that's human capital. That's all European. I mean, speaking in this case, EU and UK based, and so we feel like that's not a substantial risk, and we have the same thing with AWS, and we're just adding Azure now for really the same reason. So the EU GDPR 0365, right, to try to hijack that by anyone else. It just doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, no
Yeah.
one's going to be hijacking, 60 million 0365 European users out of the. I mean, you couldn't lift the load, right? Where would you be?
Yeah, I think the
Oh,
one of the company that we were working with, or at least I was evaluating them, was in country, and they have a solution for more focused around CRM in terms of sovereignty. We didn't adopt them because it wasn't kind of suiting our requirement, but they, on at least on the face of it, they are kind of trying to solve that from likes of Salesforce by providing a top layer and encrypting the data so that the data doesn't the plain data doesn't leave the country. So they do have it, but I haven't kind of done a deep analysis of those. So,
yeah.
but I agree
We're
with you
doing.
in terms of the large scale players. It's very difficult to kind of uproot them and move those infrastructure uh, out.
Yeah, I mean, your risk on the large players when you go to your bonding, your IT bonding is the lowest. So we're doing the
Yeah,
same. We do the same thing with Salesforce. So it's, if you've got Salesforce, SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, AWS, the you know the kind of event that would require them to break glass and break EU sovereignty and GDPR is so extreme. I mean, it's basically war. Like,
Well,
it's one of the
but
fantasy.
we're very much living in those times.
No, but I mean, we're talking like the European army that does not exist invading the United States, and the United States invading the European super country, right? Like it's fantasy.
I
It's not.
think it's a lot less than that. If you look at what happened with the weaponization of the US dollar when the Kremlin invaded Ukraine, the fear that people have is that that level of escalation you're describing was entirely sensible and safe, reasonable. It's gone from a 1 in a billion or 1 in a trillion chance to 1 in 100,000 or whatever your numbers are. But it's suddenly gone from impossible, would never happen, as you said, alien invasion, to it's actually possible. Under what circumstances might it happen? Which is enough for some loads to be this might actually have to affect our planning. I agree with you that it could still be too rare that it should affect a lot of people. It shouldn't affect a lot of people, but I think it's materially changed.
Your Cisco infrastructure crashes before all that.
Yeah.
Because if that happens, then you rip out all the network infrastructure and it's game over, and we're all just playing with
we have
tools.
we
Going
have
back
much bigger
to
problem
Tesco for
then.
hammers. Right?
Exactly. Cool. Excellent conversation. Thank you all. I'm just conscious on time. Thank you everyone for dedicating an hour. Thank you, Tom and Adam and Jack and Spirit as well. And thanks, Barry and Chelsea, for hosting and helping with that. Barry, over to you for closing.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. If you've all got a dash, please dash. But there's a link. Before you do, please click that link. It's about 3 comments up. If you haven't already put your LinkedIn on there, you're more than welcome to. As I said at the beginning, some of you might have missed it, some of you might have been here. The whole point of this thing, like as Sachin finished there, it's an interesting conversation, but it's very much designed to just be the beginning, to start these conversations off rather than to be everything within 1 hour. So hopefully you all are interested in this topic, which is what's brought you here. So use that as an opportunity to connect with everyone that's on the call and start those conversations, continue those conversations and build those relationships. I will say that just over the last year, we've set up the CTO Job Club. And so we've spoken to a lot of CTOs who have started looking for work, maybe been made redundant or whatever. They've looked for work for the first time in some time. And the first thing we say is the best thing is through your network. Still 90% of people are getting jobs through their network at that level. And what most people say is they haven't spent enough time trying to cultivate or develop their network while they were employed. So for all those out there, I'd highly recommend connect with everyone on the call, and then take it from there. But yeah, nothing else to say other than, Sachin, thank you so much for answering the call to put this on and manage the conversation. Adam, Tom, and as you say, Jake and Spirit, thanks for signing up.
Thanks very
and
much.
Sharing your thoughts.
That was a really good conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.